Hi guys, welcome back to Lexalexus. Today we're going to be doing more score predictions. We've made it to week 21. Apologies on the delay of the video, it's been a hectic week. But I'm posting this pretty early within Friday, so hopefully it'll give you guys more than enough time to leave your score predictions in the comments down below. As always guys, if you predict these upcoming games, you will then be able to score some points on the Lexalexus Football Prediction League. I'm grateful we have a week between this game and week 22 because it should being a keyword, give me more than enough time to catch up on the Prediction League because I'm currently on game week 20 at the moment, so it's really close. So I should be able to give you an update on that next week. If you guys like what you see, please smash the like button. It really does help the growth of this channel. Please hit the subscribe button too. It really does help the growth of this channel. We're closing in on 3,000 subscribers. It'd be amazing if we can get there as soon as we can. And please also share the channel too. All three of these things are free to do and they really help. So without any further ado, let's start predicting week 21. We start things off with Derby and Portsmouth. So at the start of the season, you would have assumed that Derby were quite far ahead with Portsmouth. They looked really settled. Their home form looked really good. Portsmouth were lagging behind, had a tough run to the start of the season, of course, but all of a sudden the tides are changing with these two sides. So Portsmouth are doing really well at the moment. They're unbeaten in their last 4 games and they are actually out of the bottom 3, which is unbelievable for Portsmouth. And I've mentioned this a couple of times. Since Colby Bishop has come back into that squad, they have had a new lease of life going forward. Derby have not been doing particularly well with their form at the moment. They are struggling just a little bit. So both Derby and Portsmouth drew in their last game. Derby was a really good point actually for them against Burnley and actually had the better chances, I think, in that game overall and looked a bit more of a threat. Portsmouth were involved in a draw to Norwich. It wasn't the most inspiring of games to watch. It wasn't one of their better home performances. Away from home, I do think it's going to be very tough to call this one. I think a 1-goal win wouldn't surprise me here, but I think this one will be a draw. I could see Portsmouth maybe getting the lead, but Derby will be able to dig deep and will be able to get a result. I'm going to go actually for a 1-1 draw. I just feel that I can't really edge one of these sides at the moment. They're really close actually, in my opinion, in terms of the quality. And I do think the fact that Derby are at home, I will give them the benefit of the doubt to get a point. But ultimately, it's a tough one to call. I'll be interested to hear what you think as well. Now to the early Saturday games, we start off with Bristol City going up against QPR. Both sides having opposite forms. So Bristol City at this moment in time have only won 1 game in their last 5, which was a 4-0 victory against Plymouth. But their other games, they have resulted in narrow defeats, probably with the exception of that 3-0 defeat to Portsmouth. But they picked up what I felt was a really good result against Sunderland. I think it would have been a lot sweeter had they not conceded late on to Patrick Roberts for Sunderland. But I do think it was an improved performance by Bristol City, and they definitely gave themselves a good response after a pretty poor showing against Portsmouth in the prior game. QPR are on fire at this moment. They are unbeaten in their last 5, and they've actually picked up 3 wins out of their last 4, and 2 consecutive home wins in a row. I cannot believe it. Their home wins have come like buses. You don't see any for a while, but suddenly 2 come at once. They beat Norwich, and then of course they got their win in midweek as well. It's just, what an unbelievable turnaround just to even follow that up with getting that win against Oxford. Brilliant stuff for QPR, and they've certainly been put through it for QPR fans. They certainly had their patience tested, but they did still give Cifuentes the chance. And actually, I feel like I'm now seeing the progress that he's now expecting from his QPR side this season. But I've got to be honest, I think this game is a pretty tough one to call. Bristol City have not lost many games at home all season, and actually all of their home games have been really tight. So Oh, it's so tough to call. So I could see either one of them winning this, but again, you know what? I'm going to be really boring. I'm actually going to say this is going to be a draw too. I'm going to go 1-1. I think the half 12 kickoffs have had a repeated history of being pretty low scoring, and I think this one's going to follow a very similar trend. So I'm going to go for a draw, but I'd like you guys to tell me which one of those, if any, you would edge. Maybe I would say... Oh, I don't even know. Maybe Bristol City with them being at home, but honestly, this one's such a tough game to call. Next up, we got Coventry and Hull City. This is a pretty crucial game for the bottom of the championship. With Frank Lampard's first stint as Coventry manager, it's been a real mixed bag for him with his first 3 games, a win, a draw and a loss. He's actually experienced his first loss as a manager in Coventry's last game against West Brom. Probably a tough result for them to take. I don't think West Brom played particularly amazing, but they really took their chance as well. And Coventry, whilst they did get some dangerous areas, they had many chances, but they just could not take them. I do think their lack of quality going forward in the final third is proving to be a pretty big problem for this Coventry side. But you could say the same thing for Hull as well. I do think... for the fact that they got a draw, it's ended their losing streak, which is great. It was Ruben Sellers' first game in charge, and I did see an improvement for this Hull City side. So I will be interested to see, can Sellers eventually start getting Hull to pick up some points here? But I do think there is a lack of quality and confidence going forward into the final third. So I do think with this period now before the January transfer window, Hull just need to do the best that they can to accrue as many points as they can and to try and get a draw or at least 3 points against any winnable game. And I would put this game as a winnable game, you know, for either side because both are struggling in their own ways. But honestly, at the moment, I'm a little bit more confident with Coventry. That it still feels like that there's progress to be made with Frank Lampard, but I am seeing some positive things. He's slowly but surely integrating with that squad, and I think it will start delivering more consistency within their performances. And that's been Coventry's problem all season, is a lack of consistency. With a prediction here, I think with them losing their last game, I think it's very common for Coventry City to then back that up with a win. And I'm going to go for a 2-1 home victory to Coventry. So the first non-draw prediction I'm predicting here. But I do think this one's going to be really, really close. A really tight one in terms of the bottom of the championship. Last one of the half 12 kickoffs is Preston Leeds. Preston have actually had some pretty good results against Leeds and Deepdale in recent history, so I do think they might have a small chance in this one. Preston have finally won an away game in the Championship, so this is their first away win of the season. They beat Cardiff City by 2-0. Some of it was helped, of course. I think Cardiff were... I can't mince my words. I think they were shocking in that game against Preston, and Preston took full advantage of Cardiff looking really, really shoddy. But it's now going to be a tough one against Leeds. Leeds are performing really, really well. It is 4 wins out of their last 5. However, I will say with their last away games, which involved a 1-0 defeat to Blackburn and a 4-3 win against Swansea, I do think there's more fragility away from home than Leeds have in their home games. So if any time Preston could get a result, I think it could be that one. And honestly, with Heckingbottom returning to Leeds, I think that's going to be interesting as well. And Preston just having a little bit of a wind up their sails. They're unbeaten for their last 5 games as well, with having 4 consecutive draws before their win last time around. I can see Preston getting another draw out of this, actually. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Preston did draw against West Brom quite recently, of course, and I picked up some draws against some pretty big sides. You know, if they took points against Burnley, Middlesbrough is another example. I believe Watford they took points off. So I do think Preston are actually taking points against the top sides in the Championship, and I do think we'll see a repeated history here. So I'll go for a draw in this one. Maybe a little bit controversial, but let me know what you think as well. We've now made it to the 3 o'clock. So we start things off with Blackburn and Luton Town. This, I think, is going to be an interesting one. Blackburn's form, where on earth has it come from? 4 to 5 wins in a row. And suddenly, Blackburn are now back in the conversation of the top 6. That is just how crazy a run of form could do for a side in the Championship. And fair play to Blackburn, because not only are they winning games, they're keeping clean sheets in the process. I think it's 4 clean sheets in a row for Blackburn. And considering we were bashing their defence a lot of the time, it's just none of this makes sense. But Blackburn are finding a way to get some results. Luton have been a little bit inconsistent. They did pick up a crucial win against Stoke in midweek. A very, very narrow win in the end. It was a little bit tense, but they got the job done. But typically with Luton, which I've said the same thing with Coventry, they go and get a good performance and then they follow that up with a defeat. And Luton away from home, I've got to say, have not been really competitive whatsoever. There's been a little bit more of an ease with Luton at Kenilworth Road, but away from home they've not been really great at all, unfortunately. And with this game here, I could see Blackburn being the favourites for this one. I fancy Luton to maybe get a goal, but I think it's going to be a 2-1 victory to Blackburn. They just, to me, have got a little bit more going for them. They've got more confidence. I think naturally that's going to give them a little bit more impetus and momentum with this game. Next up is Middlesbrough and Millwall. Now, this to me feels a really tough game to predict. So, within my last batch of videos, Neil Harris has announced he's stepping down as Millwall manager after this game. I mean, that broke within hours after I released my last predictions video, which I wish I caught the news when I was recording it. But it's crazy how quickly things change within the Championship. And I don't know what sort of performance we're going to get. They did, Millwall, play against Sheffield United in midweek. It was a narrow defeat for them in the end, which naturally with majority of their games, they have been involved in some pretty narrow defeats. Middlesbrough have had a tough run. To have 2 consecutive away games against Burnley and Leeds, not easy. They've only picked up 1 point in those 2 games as well. So I do think Middlesbrough are still a little bit behind to be having that same pace regarding the top 3 of the Championship. But I do think if they are still able to knock off these points off against these big sides, I do think slowly but surely Middlesbrough will start to cement themselves in this part of the table. Middlesbrough need to win this ultimately to try and regain that form back into the top 6. So crucial game for both sides for different reasons. But for me, this is tough. I'm going to say Middlesbrough might edge this with them being at home. I'm going to say a 2-0 victory to Middlesbrough. But honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if Mill snatch a result just to sort of avenge Neil Harris in a way, to give them their congratulations and gratitude for what an incredible job he's done at that club. Let me know what you think as well with the news of Neil Harris stepping down. Who would Millwall bring in? Let me know in the comments. Next is Oxford and Sheffield Wednesday. Another game that's pretty crucial in the lower part of the Championship, but more so for Oxford. They are living very dangerously now. They had that good start to the season, of course. Slowly but surely, their momentum is running out and they are really close now to entering into the bottom 3. They're only 1 point above the bottom 3 as it stands. And actually, if results go against them, Oxford could find themselves falling into the bottom 3 for the first time this season. Sheffield Wednesday, I do think their performances have not been the best actually in the past couple of games or so, but they're still picking up enough points, as it were, to still allow them to be a little bit more competitive regarding the Championship. So they're doing the right thing about being able to pick enough points even if they may not be playing well at the moment. But I do think with this game here, Sheffield Wednesday have done okay, I think, in the road. They haven't been amazing, but they have picked up some recent good results in the road. I'm thinking Derby as a recent example, actually going from behind to beat Derby in that way. So I do think this game's going to be having a very similar vibe to that one. I wouldn't even be surprised if Oxford lead the majority of the game. But actually, as a prediction, I just have a sneaky feeling it's going to be Sheffield Wednesday that claim all 3 points here. I'm going 2-1 Sheffield Wednesday, a devastating result for Oxford's perspective. And they really need to be starting to gain these results now, these positive results, if they want to prevent falling into the bottom 3. I do think, though, it could really be the tiniest of margins that will determine this game. Next up is Sheffield United and Plymouth. You've got a team in the top 3 facing a team in the bottom 3 of the Championship. Now, I can imagine that a lot of you will be predicting in the comments that Sheffield United will be getting a win with this. Unfortunately, with Plymouth, their away form has actually proven to be a little bit more embarrassing in more ways than one, unfortunately. They've conceded more goals than any other Championship side this season. Almost all their points are from home form as well. So all the stats are telling you that Plymouth will not win this one, but ultimately it will be very typical for Championship if Plymouth get their first win against a team who have not lost at home all season. I mean, it literally, you wouldn't be able to write this stuff. It's insane, really, to be honest. But if I'm playing it safe, I think I'm going to go for a 3-0 victory to Sheffield United. I think someone in the comments predicted actually that they expect Plymouth's away form to turn around pretty soon, which, you know, maybe that could be the case. But for me, I don't think Sheffield United away is going to be the game we'll see it. But, you know, we've seen some crazy things in the Championship before, of course. Let me know what scores you'll be predicting for this game in the comments as well. Next up for a massive game at the bottom of the Championship is Stoke and Cardiff. Both sides, for me, have not been impressive. They both have not won in their last 5 games and are both dropping down the table as quick as you know it. Cardiff have actually already fallen back into the bottom 3 despite having that run of form, that little bit of a bounce they had when Errol Balou was dismissed initially. But now they're back in this position of the bottom 3, and I'm really struggling to see the confidence of many people thinking that Cardiff will get out of it. A lot of people are writing them off. If Cardiff are a really strong side, they will prove those people wrong and get a result. But ultimately, against that game against Preston, they looked really defeated, running out of ideas in a way how to break a side down. I do think Cardiff are a way better on the road though, and that is not going to be ideal for Stoke, which Stoke themselves are falling down the table pretty considerably. It was a bad defeat against Luton, another relegation threatened side, to lose in the way that they did as well. Stoke have the ability to win on the day. I do think pound for pound, I think their squad is stronger than Cardiff's, but it's a question of whether they'll take their chances and whether Cardiff could sneak something. I think this is going to be like the game that Cardiff played against Sheffield Wednesday. I think they'll lead and then they'll concede an equaliser and the game will fizzle out. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw actually in this one, which will be very unhelpful for both of these sides because right now they would be wanting to try and get as far away from the bottom 3 as possible. But ultimately, with the amount of bad luck both of these sides have had this season, it wouldn't surprise me if a draw is dealt with both of these sides, which ultimately would be one of the worst case scenarios for both of them. Next up is Swansea and Sunderland. So an interesting assessment with both of these sides. Swansea are, I gotta say, they're going really quietly about their way, but I think their performances have looked really good actually. So I'm a little bit excited with this encounter because I do think this one is really close to call. Sunderland are having a bit of a tough time at the moment, quite a frustrating period for them, certainly playing well enough to get more points than what they're actually receiving at the moment, but I do think the wastefulness is really starting to catch up with them. I think with what Sunderland had at the start of the season was that they were really clinical with their chances. With some key players being injured for a good period of time, they have seemed to have lost that flow a little bit. So Sunderland will still need to find a way around of, you know, if they are going to miss chances, they need to score enough to get a result. Ultimately, they had to rely on a last-minute equaliser from Patrick Roberts to snatch a point at home against Bristol City, who had, you know, not won a game for quite a fair bit of time going into that game. So I do think it's one of those ones where I could see one of the sides winning by the odd goal, but I would also not be surprised if either one of these sides scores a late equaliser. It's got that feeling for me that that could be the case. As a prediction, I'm going to go, and I'm predicting so many of these scorelines, I'm going to go for another 1-1 draw. I really can't back either one of these sides because I do think both these sides are so closely matched, and therefore I can't really have the balls to back either one of them. So I'm going to go for a draw. Next up is Watford and West Brom. I mean, for West Brom fans, how was that result against Coventry? They have finally ended their drawing streak, and it was quite comical for how long the drawing streak was going on for, and I don't think it was one of their better performances, but ultimately, if you're in that position, desperate for points, you would take it with whatever way that they would take it, and I do think when West Brom did have the chances, they were really good actually with converting them. Watford, it was a pretty poor performance in the end against Hull City. They did rely on a late equaliser, and I think with all things considered, with the fact they conceded so late on, but then they equalised even later on in the game, I don't think they can complain too much about the point. At Vicarage Road is where they're really, proving it to be a fortress this season. There's been very little sides who've been able to pick up any sort of result at Vicarage Road this season. Although West Brom, to me, have got a very experienced Championship manager. They've got experienced, heavy Championship players. So I do think they are capable of dethroning Watford's really strong form, but I don't think they'll be able to beat them. So it's going to be a draw, but I can't predict another 1-1 draw, surely, with the amount of 1-1 draws I predicted. I'm going to go for a 0-0 then. I'm going to predict this game's going to be a damp squib, and it's going to be a 0-0 draw. But I'm really hoping that's not the case, because I do think this game, whilst it might look pretty negative on paper, I think it's finally poised, because I do think it's really, really close and competitive between these two sides. We end our score predictions on Norwich and Burnley. This one, I think, is actually going to be a very interesting game. Both were involved in 0-0 draws in their respective midweek games, and both pretty anticlimactic with their performances, especially for Burnley's point of view. They were at home to Derby. I think they would have expected to threaten more than what they did, but they have notoriously struggled against sides who do sit back. They've actually been better, Burnley, against teams around them in the table, who are high up the table, who will play football, and Burnley typically know the right way around again around these games, home and away as well. They picked up some really crucial away results against these sides. Norwich, on the other hand, they've been doing a little bit better at Carrow Road. They are starting to find the ball in the back of the net a little bit more, although I say that they did fail to score in their last two games. So the thing is with Norwich, I've already said here, with the likes of Coventry and Luton, they're proving to be a pretty inconsistent side. But again, likewise, what I mentioned with Sunderland, they have had their injury problems. So I do excuse them for that, but again, it's about trying to find that right balance of counteracting the deficiencies you have within your squad, and I do think it's been a bit hit and miss on that front here. This game, I do think, is finally poised. I do think both sides will be able to find the ball in the back of the net. It's just going to be interesting to see which one edges one out. And for me, I think based on previous results, I think it might be Burnley who might get a result here. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I'm going 2-1 Burnley, but ultimately, I wouldn't even be surprised if it's 2-1 the other way around. I do think it could be a coin flip this game, but I'm going to go for the way for Burnley based on recent history and recent set of results. But let me know what you think as well. So guys, that wraps it up today for my score predictions. Once again, apologies with the lateness. I have, really tried to get this out as quickly as possible. Hopefully you guys will still have enough time to leave your predictions. I've now left mine. It's now down to you guys to leave your predictions in the comments. Thank you guys again so much for watching. If you can like, subscribe and share, it really does help the growth of this channel. All three of these things are free to do and they really help. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you're enjoying this video. And as always, I'll see you guys soon. Take care everyone and have a good weekend. Take care guys.